They called her a criminal. They said she'd snapped. But not a single person knew the real reason why the quiet maid took the keys to a millionaire's Ferrari and disappeared into the night. When the truth finally came out, it silenced every whisper, and stunned even the man she worked for. Denise Carter had been a housekeeper for the Langston family for 8 years. In her early 50s, with silver strands woven through her tightly pulled back hair, she was known for working quietly and quickly, never asking for more than her weekly paycheck. She lived in a small 2-bedroom apartment on the edge of Savannah with her son, Andre, who was about to graduate high school. The Langston estate sat like a castle on a bluff overlooking the river, polished marble entryways, sprawling gardens, and a garage that looked more like an exotic car showroom. Among the sleek machines, one stood out like a jewel. A cherry-red Ferrari F8 Tributo, worth more than Denise could ever dream of earning in her lifetime. Grant Langston, the family patriarch, treated that car like a piece of art. He'd polish it himself on Sundays, never letting anyone else even touch the wheel. It was a warm Friday morning in late May when Denise first sensed something was wrong. She was wiping down the granite counters in the kitchen when she heard voices from the study. She normally tuned out the Langstons' conversations. What they discussed was never her business, but the strain in their tones stopped her hands mid-swipe. "I don't care about the cost, Claire." Grant's voice cracked in a way Denise had never heard before. "We can't lose him." "Grant, they said the neurosurgeon won't be here until tonight," Claire Langston replied, her voice trembling. "By then, it could be too late." Denise's stomach dropped. She stepped quietly toward the doorway, glancing into the study. Claire was gripping her phone, her face pale and wet with tears. Grant's hands were clenched into fists, his jaw tight. Then Denise heard the name. "It's Matthew," Claire choked out. "He collapsed during practice. They think it's a brain aneurysm." Matthew Langston was 17, their only child. Denise had watched him grow from a shy middle schooler into a polite young man who still said, "Thank you," when she brought him snacks. He'd once helped her carry groceries to her car when she'd injured her wrist, refusing to let her lift a single bag. She didn't know what possessed her next. Maybe it was the memory of Andre lying in a hospital bed years ago with pneumonia, how she'd have done anything to save him. Maybe it was the desperate way Claire's voice broke. Or maybe it was just pure instinct. Without thinking, she slipped down the hall toward the garage. The Ferrari sat under the glow of overhead lights, the curves of its body reflecting crimson like molten glass. Her hands shook as she reached for the keys hanging on a hook labeled F8, "Do not touch." Denise had never driven anything more valuable than her 10-year-old Ford Focus. She had no idea how a Ferrari would handle, but she knew it could get her to the hospital faster than any other car in the garage. She pressed the fob. The Ferrari gave a sharp chirp, lights flashing. Sliding into the driver's seat, she felt the leather hug her like it belonged to another world. The dashboard lit up, futuristic and intimidating, as she pushed the start button. The engine roared to life, a deep, throaty growl that sent vibrations through her chest. Her pulse was racing. "Lord, guide my hands," she whispered. The tires squealed as she shot down the driveway. She didn't dare look back toward the mansion. She knew if she did, she might lose her nerve. The only image in her mind was Matthew's face, pale and still, waiting for help that wasn't coming fast enough. The Ferrari was wild, leaping forward with the lightest touch. Denise clung to the wheel, weaving through late-morning traffic, her eyes fixed on the open highway ahead. She knew the hospital where Matthew had been taken. It was over 2 hours away. Every second counted. But as the miles rolled under her tires, another reality began to creep in. She had just stolen a millionaire's prized possession. If she was caught, this wouldn't just be losing her job, it could mean prison time. And Andre would be left alone. She blinked back tears, pressing harder on the gas. She thought of the kindness Matthew had shown her over the years. She thought of the way Claire sometimes slipped her leftovers in Tupperware without saying a word, pretending it was too much for them so Denise wouldn't feel embarrassed. Just past the halfway mark, her phone buzzed in the cup holder. She snatched it up. "Mom." Andre's voice was panicked. "Mr. Langston just called. He says you took the Ferrari, what's going on?" Her throat tightened. "Andre, I can't explain right now." "Just tell him I'm bringing his son home." There was silence, then her son's voice softened. "Be careful, Mom." She hung up. Her hands trembled as she shifted gears, the Ferrari surging forward. What Denise didn't know was that at that very moment, Grant Langston had already contacted the police, and a patrol car was pulling onto the same highway she was on. The wail of sirens cut through the hum of the engine. Denise's heart leapt into her throat as she checked the rearview mirror. A blue and white patrol car was closing the distance fast, its light strobing across the Ferrari's red paint like a warning. For a split second, her foot hovered over the brake. She could pull over, explain everything, and hope the officer believed her. But in her mind, she could see Matthew lying on that hospital bed, every second his condition worsening. She couldn't stop, not now. She gripped the wheel tighter, whispering, "I'm sorry," to no one in particular, and pressed the accelerator. The Ferrari responded like it had been waiting for the command. The scenery blurred. Denise weaved through traffic, the car hugging the road as though it read her every move. She wasn't a thrill seeker, but desperation was a powerful teacher, her reflexes sharpened, her fear narrowed into pure focus. The sirens grew faint in the distance. For a moment, it seemed she might have lost them. But then, just as she took an exit toward the hospital, another patrol car appeared ahead, blocking part of the road. Denise's mind raced. She flicked the turn signal as if to pull over, then swerved hard into the right lane, slipping past the cruiser before it could cut her off. Horns blared from startled drivers, but she didn't slow down. By the time she reached the hospital parking lot, her hands were slick with sweat. She pulled the Ferrari into the emergency entrance, drawing stares from nurses, patients, and even an orderly who stopped pushing a gurney mid-step. She jumped out, not even bothering to lock the car. "Matthew Langston." She gasped to the triage nurse. "Where is he?" She caught herself, realizing her role in the Langston household might raise questions. "I'm here to see him. His parents." The nurse glanced at her skeptically but pointed toward the elevator. "ICU, 3rd floor." "But you can't just." Denise didn't wait. She sprinted down the corridor, her shoes slapping against the polished floor. When she reached the ICU, she saw 2 doctors clustered around a bed. Through the glass panel, she caught sight of Matthew, pale, still, with tubes and monitors surrounding him. Her chest tightened. One of the doctors glanced up as she pushed through the door. "Ma'am, you can't be in here. Please." Denise's voice cracked. "I had to get here. His parents are hours away." Before the doctor could respond, Matthew's eyelids fluttered. It was barely a movement, but enough to make the nurse at his side lean in. "Matthew? Can you hear me?" The doctor's focus shifted instantly. "His vitals are improving," he murmured, scanning the monitors. "He's stabilizing." Relief flooded through Denise so strongly her knees nearly buckled. But her moment of quiet victory was short-lived. A uniformed officer appeared in the doorway, flanked by Grant Langston himself. His face was unreadable, his eyes fixed on her. "Denise," he said slowly, his voice low but firm, "step outside with me. Now." She swallowed hard, following him into the hallway. 2 officers waited, hands resting near their belts. She could feel the weight of their suspicion pressing down on her. Grant looked at her for a long moment, his jaw working as if he was trying to hold something back. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" Her voice trembled. "I know I stole your car. I know you'll probably fire me. But I couldn't." She stopped, the lump in her throat threatening to choke her. I couldn't just stand there while he waited for help. That car was the only way to get here fast enough. One of the officers stepped forward. Mr. Langston, do you want to press charges? Grant's gaze shifted from her to the ICU room where Matthew now had a faint hint of color in his cheeks. He was silent for several seconds. Then, to everyone's shock, he turned back to the officers. No, he said. She saved my son's life. The car, it's just metal and paint. She's worth more than all of it. The officers exchanged a glance, then stepped back. Denise blinked at him, stunned. Grant's expression softened for the first time that day. You didn't just drive a Ferrari, Denise. You drove my trust straight into the heart of this family. Her eyes burned with tears. I just did what any parent would do. He shook his head. No. You did more. And I'll never forget it. As they stood there, the sound of Matthew's faint laughter drifted from the ICU. For the first time all day, Denise allowed herself to breathe. But she had no idea the public reaction to what she'd done was about to turn her life upside down. By the next morning, Denise's phone was buzzing non-stop. At first, she thought it was just Andre checking in before school, but when she picked it up, she heard a voice she didn't recognize. Ms. Carter? This is Erica from Channel 9 News. We'd like to interview you about what happened yesterday at Memorial Hospital. Denise froze. Interview? No, I think you've got the wrong person. But Erica didn't miss a beat. We have photos of you arriving in Mr. Langston's Ferrari. The story's already spreading on social media, people are calling you the Ferrari Angel. Denise's stomach turned. She wasn't a hero. She hadn't done this for attention. She'd just done what she thought was right. By noon, reporters were parked outside her apartment building, cameras ready. Andre called from school, laughing in disbelief. Mom, they're saying you're a legend. Even my friends saw it on TikTok. It turned out, someone in the hospital parking lot had recorded her arrival, leaping out of the Ferrari, shouting for Matthew, sprinting inside. The video had been shared millions of times. Comment sections were filled with strangers calling her brave, selfless, even reckless in the best way. Later that day, Grant Langston himself appeared at her door. Not in a suit, not with his usual polished confidence, he was in jeans and a worn polo, looking almost humble. I figured you could use some help dealing with the circus outside, he said, glancing toward the reporters. Denise stepped aside to let him in. Mr. Langston. Grant, he corrected gently. After what you've done, I think we can drop the formality. They sat at her small kitchen table, a stark contrast to the gleaming dining hall in his mansion. He sipped from the coffee she poured, then leaned forward. Matthew's improving. The doctors say if he'd waited until the specialist arrived last night, it might have been too late. You changed the outcome. That's not something I can repay, but I'm going to try. Denise shook her head. I don't want money. I don't want. It's not just money, Grant interrupted. I want to make sure you and Andre never have to worry again. He reached into his briefcase and slid a folder across the table. Inside was a college scholarship application, already filled out with Andre's name. Beneath it, a letter from Grant's law firm stating they'd cover the full cost of tuition, books, and living expenses for 4 years at any university in the country. Denise stared at the papers, her vision blurring. This is too much. It's the least I can do, Grant said softly. Because of you, I still have a son. You didn't just save Matthew, you reminded me that trust isn't built with contracts or bank accounts. It's built with action. Her hands shook as she closed the folder. Thank you. I don't know what to say. Grant smiled faintly. Say yes. And one more thing, Matthew wants to see you. When they arrived at the hospital, Matthew was sitting up, his hair messy but his eyes bright. The moment he saw her, his face broke into a grin. "Ms. Carter," he said weakly, "did you really drive Dad's Ferrari?" She laughed through the tears threatening to fall. "I did. And I didn't even scratch it." Matthew chuckled, then grew serious. "Thank you. For not waiting. For not listening to the rules when the rules didn't make sense." For a moment, Denise couldn't speak. She just reached for his hand, giving it a gentle squeeze. Outside the hospital room, the cameras were waiting again. This time, Denise didn't shy away. She stepped into the sunlight, knowing the world had already made up its mind about her, but for once, she didn't mind the attention. Because this wasn't just a story about a stolen Ferrari. It was about how far someone would go when the stakes were human life. And maybe, just maybe, the world needed more people willing to break the rules for the right reasons.